I'm not Dave.
And I'm not Wally.
Previous video, we went over all the different fasteners for different decks we're going to use, and plates and whatnot. So now we're going to get into the attachment into the deck. We're going to start off with metal deck. We have other decks we're going to go over: cement, gyp, tech.
Just about everything.
Just about everything, and what fasteners we're going to in the book that we're going to use these for.
Yep.
So right now we're going to go over the metal deck.
Okay.
So Dave, let's talk about fasteners. What fasteners we're going to need to go into a metal deck.
If we're going to do insulation, it's either a 12 or a 14, and again, those are wire sizes, right?
And the length is going to depend how much insulation, your insulation package.
Exactly. You need 3/4 of an inch penetration to a steel deck, right?
Okay.
Be it seam or insulation.
So let me ask you this: 3/4 of penetration, is it through this flute or is it through that flute?
The top flute.
Top flute.
Yes.
Why do we need to hit the top flute?
It's called the pendulum effect because when you insert your screw, if it's too long, and especially on the seam or on the sheet, as the sheet bellows,
Mechanically attached especially.
right, it'll tilt, it'll pendulum.
Just from the force of that sheet wanting to take off your roof, right?
And that's part of our specification that says anything over 8 inches, you need a hardboard. That hardboard will keep that, or help keep that screw from moving.
Okay, so what we've got here, we've got just 1 layer of 1.5 just for demonstration purposes. We've got our metal deck. Now, hopefully you guys understand in the real world, realistically, the metal deck's not going to be attached to wood joints.
Probably not.
Have metal bar joists. It's going to be attached and welded. That's how it's held to the building.
Right.
So, if I'm going through 1 inch, 1.5 insulation, I need 3/4 of penetration through the deck. What size fastener would I need? The smallest.
Smallest would be 2.5.
2.5 or 3 inch.
3, yeah.
We don't make half sizes.
Right.
So you're going to go with 3 inch screw, which is what I have here.
Right.
So I'm going to hit the top flute.
And that's what you want to do.
Good to go. Now, if I hit that bottom flute,
Well, number one, you didn't hit the bottom flute.
because I'm not even penetrating it.
That's right.
Let's say a guy has on a job, got a box, I don't know, 6 inches or 7 inches he just wants to get rid of on a job, a couple layers of insulation. He puts the screw in. If I hit the top flute, I'm in the top flute, right? I'm good.
You're in the top flute, but
But what's the problem?
there's no threads.
No threads. We're into the shank.
Right.
So basically, you might as well not put a screw in there anyway, because
Right.
it's not doing
Because when that thing starts billowing.
So it's long enough to hit the bottom flute, right?
Wow.
Barely.
Yeah.
Barely.
Yeah.
So we got the same problem. It's not really going to hold anything.
No.
So very important, you do a mechanically attached system, you hit the top flute of that deck. So in theory, your field sheet should run which way to the deck? My deck's running this way, should run across, perpendicular. So you're distributing that load. Let's say a guy either doesn't really care how he runs a sheet, might be easier for him to run with the deck. So now I'm running with the deck flute. Here's where my fasteners go, right in the middle of that top flute. For some reason, the sheet gets off. Or, now we know everything on a new construction job is like perfectly straight, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
They use the sun.
So all of a sudden that roof deck is doing a dog leg left or right, and this sheet's 100 feet long, or that building's 1,000 feet long. Well, pretty soon you're kind of off camber here a little bit. Well, this fastener may hit, this fastener may hit. Well, now I don't hit nothing.
Right.
If I move it this way, what happens here?
You will be encroaching on your hot air
On the
well.
weld area.
Yeah.
If I move it this way,
Ooh, you're out of spec now.
because these are just going to get worse and worse and worse. Sure, I could cut the next sheet off, cut it off and reset it. But what does that do to the next sheet? You got to cut that one, you got to cut that one. And what are you doing if this building's 1,000 feet long? Where's all my point load? On one flute.
On one flute.
These are attached to the building, to the metal bar joist,
Right.
and the wind uplift on that could literally rip the bar joist right off the building. I mean, it could happen. Or if nothing else, rip the deck off the bar joist. And there it is laying in the parking lot.
That's not good.
No. So let's do the insulation fastening and talk
Right.
about that. Now, we had talked about the different plates, right?
Right.
So what is this with the barbs on it?
Seam?
Can I use that for my insulation?
No.
Okay. It goes in my
Membrane.
seam attachment.
Yeah.
So this is my insulation. 3-inch round. Can I use that on my seam?
Nope.
Has
It's
to be
made for
the membrane.
insulation.
Okay.
Yep.
Now we also talked about there's difference in the plates.
Right.
You want to explain that?
Well, flat plate will work on anything.
Right.
And this is something you want to use on like a high density board, a hard
Hardboard or something,
Right.
a cover board.
This one, not so much.
Not on a hardboard.
Right.
It'll work
because-
fine in the ISO because the fastener will suck it down in.
Because of the
Right.
dimple down there. See?
So it doesnn't matter if it's a mechanically attached system or an adhered system. If you have a hardboard that's on top,
That's going to set proud.
this is probably not the plate you want to use. It's going to make those fasteners stand proud.
Yep.
So I'm using what size screw am I using?
Should be using about a 3-inch,
What diameter?
12 or 14.
12 or 14 in the middle deck. All right, so we'll do an overdriven here.
That is definitely overdriven.
Yeah. And some guys, even you're not paying attention. You're just ramming, going away across the room, get rolling. You get something like that.
And then you can pop the deck.
Right. Could pop the back off that bar joist.
Right.
And speaking of bar joists, let's say, the bar joists are running in or supporting this deck. If you hit a bar joist, you'd have to pull that screw out. Will you be able to reuse that screw?
Oh, no.
Because you don't.
Haven't you seen people try that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it just walks on them and goes off the deck. Let's go too loose. And this could either be the guy didn't drive the right size fastener down enough or use too long a screw.
Right.
We'll actually, so let's go into the bottom flute. Let's see what happens. I got nothing. So that is too loose.
Mm-hmm.
And reason being, we have no thread engaging that deck.
Yeah. Just whip it around there.
There you go. Okay, so we got the overdriven, we got too loose. Now we need to do just right.
Perfect.
Beautiful. Okay.
Nice job on the overdriving there, bud.
Overdriven. Obviously, we don't need to put it on there.
No.
And that one is, look at that. Almost like I knew what I was. Almost like I knew what I was doing.
Almost.
Imagine if a guy was doing an adhered system. You got all, in each guy, the same guy's overdriven this or a Rhino bond system.
Yes. Well, Rhino, you wouldn't get a weld.
No. Okay, Dave, so we went over the insulation attachment. Now let's talk about sheet attachment. Basically the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
We want to hit the top flute. We'll emphasize the overdriven, underdriven, and just right type thing.
Perfect.
Within a 1/4 inch of the back of the sheet.
Right. Ew.
You can see.
Yep. When it comes up like that, that's pretty much a good indication, kind of like a flag U.
Well, and that over time, that's a pretty sharp point.
It is. It is.
With the membrane coming over top of that, once it's welded, over time, that sheet's moving.
Mm-hmm.
It could potentially rub a hole on the underside of that sheet.
Absolutely.
Imagine if this whole seam was done that way.
Right.
Imagine what that wrinkle's going to do.
Oh, yeah.
Transferred across that 10 or 12 foot wide roll.
But the weld.
And the guy trying to run the robot.
Right.
Having to deal with this. Wheel of that robot could hit that little dip right there, and you got not only voids, but you got to deal with them wrinkles.
Well, you're going to have a flat.
Right.
It's like a tire going down a flight of steps.
There you go.
It's not going to hit everywhere.
Pretty good analogy. So now we're going to go with the too long screw, underdriven. It's definitely proud.
Oh, yeah.
So that could even be from the fact he had the right size screw, the guy just didn't seat it enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, now we're going to do just the right.
Perfect.
Nice and level. Okay, Dave, so we went over the fasteners, basically the insulation and the membrane, certain size fasteners. So, if you've got flat stock, not a big issue. What about tapered?
Yeah, tapered can be a real issue because you're changing the length of the fasteners as you're working up the taper.
Yeah, and a taper package can go from, was this 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches to 2.5, 2.5 to, it can grow.
Yes.
It could be 16, 18 inches to far to your taper, which translates you're going to have to use a pretty long screw.
Right, a lot of money.
So a lot of times guys don't think about that. So just give you an example here in the audience. So remember we're hitting a top flute. So I've got a 3-inch screw right here.
Right.
So there's about my inch, right? Now as I progress up this tapered,
No.
we're not going to quite make it. Now I've got a 4-inch screw. Now so somewhere in here I'm going to have to switch to a 4-inch screw,
Right.
which may work for a while. Then as we work our way up, you got to go to a 5-inch screw.
Right.
And maybe a 6-inch screw. That's something that guys really need to think about when they're installing tapered insulation.
Well, and the thing too is, if a 3 works here, and a 3 works here, and it works here, how much thread do you have?
Right.
I mean, you may be an inch, and down here now you're out of spec, even though it's hitting.
Right.
Right.
So guys do it all the time. It's just some guys are not experienced at this. It could be a really big issue.
Oh yes, I did an inspection where they did a tapered system and never changed the length. And I walk in, look up in the ceiling, and all of a sudden the fasteners are gone. And I wasn't even to the wall.
Or they think, well, I got to have an 8-inch fastener up there, so they just run with all 8 inches. Well, you're going to run the same problem
Yeah.
or your shank,
Right.
you pass your thread and your screw. Yeah. You can tell when your screw hits like the top of the flute,
Oh yeah.
right? You're engaging that top. You can kind of gauge how much is actually going through that deck.
Right.
So now the issue becomes, again, my thread.
Right.
So there's my thread. Now if I stick that all the way through, am I going to have enough thread to engage that deck?
And if I lean on it just a little bit more,
Yeah, which tends to overdriving it.
Right.
So same thing here, you know, you could tell, okay, I engaged that top flute. Well, if I go here, I can tell right there I've not engaged.
Oops.
Or I might just barely catch that lower flute. And again, you're not going to have anything in here. You're going to tend to overdrive it.
Right.
Now we have other decks coming up. We have concrete, or wood's going to be next.
Wood,
concrete, gyp, and tech to go over the fasteners and kind of explain the same things.